Hey, what's up, guys? It's Kent. I'm riding solo this week. We have Zack and Mason both on vacation, but we do have a good special guest for you guys this week. We have Dominic Campbell on, lead writer for Inside the Panthers. Don, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. How you been?
Doing well. I have my name back. We've officially beat Kent State, so I'm allowed to use the name again.
It's
So
always a good thing.
yeah,
Always good to start with the win.
yes, sir. Obviously, want to know. We'll do a quick recap of the game, go through some of the other games this past weekend, and our takeaways, and give a little preview for this upcoming week. Um, how's that sound, Dom?
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Yeah, in case you are living under a rock, missed the game somehow. Pitt obviously won 55-24, start the season 1-0. Wasn't sure, obviously, coming into this game what we had on offense. Brand new offense coordinator, brand new looks on offense, brand new quarterback. Eli Holstein coming in, redshirt freshman, transfer from Alabama. Really had no idea what we were going to get ourselves into. Really no real expectations. Just hope we look good. Hope, we put Kent State away sizably, and we really did all those things.
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, just for context, we didn't figure out who was going to start this game until Thursday, 3 minutes prior to Narduzzi's final press conference, because Pete Thamel of ESPN broke the news. So right before we we touched Narduzzi for the last time, that was a very interesting press conference, to say the least. But yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I think Ken, we watched the spring game. I mean, Eli wasn't amazing, but he did say and Narduzzi said as well, he was dealing with a hamstring issue, which makes a lot more sense after watching what he did on Saturday. Just he's a little bit off in that spring game, but obviously looked really good. But I mean, looked good against Kent State. But I think he did. I was just a bit surprised. I thought they would go with Yarnell because I mean, they brought Yarnell with him to the ACC media days. It seemed like he was going to be the guy that was going to start, but then I think the further along we went through camp, it just seemed like when are they going to announce Eli as a starter? You
Yeah,
just kind of get the feeling with coaches sometimes. You're like, okay, when are you going to announce that he's going to be the starter? Like, come on, what are we doing here?
yeah. There was obviously a lot of rumors going around, but I think we even all said it on the pod last week. We all expected Yarnell to be the guy going into week one. Obviously, Narduzzi said earlier in the week before we recorded that they were both going to play in this game, which they did. Eli ended up playing, a vast majority of the game. He has now since been cleared as the number one overall guy. The depth chart came out again today for next week. Or is no longer there on the QB side of things. So, Eli really solidified himself in this game. We'll kind of go through the numbers, go through the game, but overall, Eli looks really good.
Yeah, his first drive, I believe he was 6 for 6. I mean, that's a pretty perfect drive for the most part. And that what really set the tone was that throw to Kenny Johnson, 46 yards near the goal line. I mean, that throw is just like, okay, like we're cooking here. We got an offense that is not afraid to throw the ball down the field and not afraid to use their star talent. I mean, like that was the biggest problem the last 2 years. I think, we'll talk about this offense and what they were able to achieve against Kent State. But really, the players were there, but the execution was not. And then that's the most disappointing thing I think about these past 2 seasons is that there were great players on both sides of the ball for Pitt, but the coaches just didn't put them in the right positions to excel. And I think I mean, it is just Kent State, but watching how Eli played that first drive was like finally a quarterback who's not afraid, a quarterback who knows whose best targets are and who's going to throw to them, and who has obviously talk about Bell, an offensive coordinator that will put him in chances to succeed, and also his wideouts as well. So that's you couldn't have asked for a better start for a quarterback. I mean, 30 for 40, 336 yards, 3 touchdowns, one pick. Maybe if he could have had another pick as well, but he didn't. So
Yeah,
so you're gonna have throws that a defender will drop. So I mean, you got to throw the ball sometimes too. I don't interceptions aren't a great stat, but I think if you're never trying to throw the ball down the field, that's even worse. So shout out to Eli for showing that he was the better of the two quarterbacks. I think it's clearly obvious he was, um, and just his poise and his understanding of the offense was pretty good. They weren't perfect, but I think his relationship between the wideouts and just where he's going to put the ball was great all game. I think Kent would agree.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. He, came out. I think one of the things that we talked about last week, things that we wanted to see. Mason, Zack, and I, we mentioned a 50 burger would be great. They got that done. Put up 55 points. Um, we said start fast. We said get Gavin the ball. I think those were the three major things that we wanted to see. All of those things happened. Coming out looking as good as Eli did, looking as good as just the offense did in general. I think you said 6-play drive. Including that throw to Kenny Johnson was just beautiful. I don't think we saw a throw nearly that good all of last year. Just perfect over the shoulder. Kenny Johnson makes a really nice grab down to about the 1 or 2 yard line. The next play, Eli runs it in for a touchdown, gets called back for a hold that may or may not have been legitimate. But they ended up scoring, I think, about 2 plays later, 9-yard passing touchdown to Konate Mumfield. Shout out to myself for the tweet predicting that Konate was going to score the first touchdown of the season, not to brag. Starting hot, that was pretty much exactly, I think, what the entire fan base needed coming off of last year with just the offensive woes. It was like a breath of fresh air, honestly. I know, last year we thought the offense looked pretty good in the opening game against
Wofford, a terrible FCS team.
Yeah,
Really
Wofford, FCS team. We opened up against an FBS team this year, and even as good as putting up 45 points against Wofford last year, we thought we might have a decent offense. This looked like a different animal. This looked like some throws and catches. It doesn't matter what kind of defense is playing against you. Eli made a few throws that you're like, okay, that's going to work against whoever you're going to line up against.
I mean, I guess we could talk about the wideouts. I mean, back to Kenny Johnson, 7 catches, 105 receiving yards, and that nice toe dragging touchdown, I think, in the third quarter. I mean, he had 15 catches last year for like 120 some yards. He almost had that same production in one game. It's like, what were they doing last year? What in the hell were they doing?
Yeah, it's like comical when you look at. I think I even tweeted out from the pod account after the game. There's going to be a number of personal statistics that happened this year that just surpassed last year's season stats very quickly. If we continue on this trend, Gavin, I think, had 18 receptions last year. Already had 5 in this game. You mentioned Kenny Johnson's stats. Obviously, Rodney Hammond is out. We can talk about that here in a minute as well. That was surprising news last week as well. Really, a lot has happened since in the week that we've been off air here. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of very shocking side by side statistics here in the next couple of weeks about players already surpassing how many yards they had all of last year.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Eli, I mean, there are only 3 times a quarterback threw more than 300 yards under Frank Signetti in the 2 seasons he was here. In one game, you've already got him throwing more than 300 yards. Like, that would be fine if they were running like a triple option, but they weren't. They were running an NFL pro style offense, and it was abysmal. I mean, you can run an NFL and you can run an NFL pro style well in college, but not like that.
Yeah, you're completely right. Like, yeah, it's just going to show here, if the offense continues to look as good as they did on Saturday, it's going to make Frank Signetti look even worse than he already did. And that decision by Narduzzi to hire him, a lot worse.
Especially after winning the ACC title in 21.
Yeah. I think a lot of Pitt fans would agree with that sentiment. We'll see how it goes here in the coming weeks. Obviously, it's Kent State. We got some more quality opponents coming up here, but if the offense can continue to click, I think some of the things that stood out to me, minus the stats, everything. Obviously, Eli, great game. You mentioned it, 330 plus passing yards. 30 for 40, I think you said. Yeah. Desmond Reed, terrific game, 14 carries, 145 yards and a touchdown, along with a long punt return touchdown. Desmond Reed really came out of the gates, gave a lot of electricity between punt return touchdown. He really had no business scoring on. Looked like he just up, right when he started there. Somehow gets out of it, breaks off to the right, runs down the sideline, scores a 78-yard punt return touchdown. He really looked electric.
Yeah, I mean, when Bell took the job, he had to bring some of his players with him, and I think the most explosive one that he brought was obviously Desmond Reed. I mean, not a tall guy by any measure, 5'8" listed. It's a bit generous that he's listed at 5'8" from what I've seen, but does not matter. He's so quick. The touchdown he scored on the ground was ridiculous. He just ran right through the defense. No one even got close to him. It's like, wow, he really is that fast. And I think prior to his injury last year, he was leading the FCS in rushing. So, I mean, seeing him being able to translate that to the FBS level, I mean, what he said all camp is like, I mean, I can do it. I don't like the speed of the game's a bit faster, but these guys aren't gonna get me like they were and at the FCS to some extent. So like, essentially, what he's saying is like, well, I mean, yeah, I can play. I know I'm a good player. I know I can do this, and he showed why on Saturday. I mean, granted, again, Kent State, but it's like, the way he ran that ball and the way he did that punt return, it's like, wow, he have a real serious um, just versatile athlete that can not only do good for himself, but also with his versatility can allow his teammates to get open as well because defenses will have to account for him a lot more than you normally would for a quarterback of his stature or running back. Sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, really had a few electric plays overall. 10 plus yards to carry on average in this first game. If he can do anything close to that here against some better quality opponents coming up the next few weeks, we're really going to have something special between him. And if Eli can, coming off a play action off of him, if he's performing well, it's going to really open this up. But I thought some of the plays that Bell drew up and attempted against his team were really awesome. A couple of trick plays that didn't work, but a couple of plays that did really work. I think just the play design, the whole offense is a lot more complicated, a lot more sound for facing these tougher opponents versus it seemed very elementary last year, I would say.
Yeah, just a bit. Last year they were so slow, and it was just like, okay, like, but now you're like, wow, like they're really trying to snap the ball as fast as they can. They're getting back to the line of scrimmage. The offensive line did pretty well with that, I would say, for the most part. And so did obviously the wideouts, tight ends, and running backs were all like, okay, when we have to get set, we have to get going, and they did that pretty well, I would say. I think that's a good thing. I think with an offense like this, it can be very complicated, but if you can work it pretty well, you got to get yourself open, and that's exactly why you put the work in all off season from January to September now to be like, well, now we can play, now we can score some points. Well, obviously a lot better than last year.
Yeah, you mentioned it. The tempo is definitely awesome. I think that the prime example of that came at the end of the third quarter. Pitt runs the ball, gets it to about 3rd and 2. I think Kent State thought they were just going to let it run to the end of the quarter. They end up running up to the ball, getting another play off. Desmond Reed makes one jump cut to the right, breaks off a nice long gain for about 20 yards. Third quarter or first quarter? Am I mixing that up?
Probably the third quarter, but I might be the first quarter. I can't remember. So,
Yeah, I think I was right there.
I know a player you're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we should talk about the running backs then. Mr. Rodney Hammond will not play in the 2024 season. This came out Friday afternoon, as all the terrible news comes out on Friday afternoons. Um, I mean, it was just a really weird news drop, and I was really surprised when like people were asking me like, "Why don't you guys know what's happening?" I'm like, "Why would I know? Who do you think I am? Do you think anybody knows that like why he was not on the team?" Like I don't know exactly what to tell you guys, but I mean, he's not going to be eligible for the rest of the season, which is disappointing because I think a lot of people expected him to finally be able to get a lot of the major touches at running back. But we don't know why he's not eligible. People have made up rumors like, or have tried to come up with rumors like he was gambling or he took steroids or something. But like, I don't know. All I know is he's not able to play on play any games this year. He's still with the team. He was on the sideline. He wasn't dressed, obviously, because can't play. So he's still with the team. Hasn't left the program yet. Uh, I guess I will ask Kent, what were your thoughts on Rodney being deemed ineligible for the 2024 season?
I was extremely disappointed. I feel like these kind of things happen. We've had a couple incidents with basketball, obviously. Now with Rodney Hammond, trying to think if there's been something comparable in football the last year or two. Off the top of my head, can't think of a prime example. But yeah, it's disappointing when these things happen. I was really excited for Rodney to have a great year. I was a little surprised when Narduzzi came out, in addition to Eli Holstein, to announce that Eli was going to start, that he was going with Reed over Rodney Hammond. I think it also caught other Panther fans by surprise when he mentioned that. But it made more sense after this news came out. Um, Obviously, like you said, we don't know the reasoning behind this. I do imagine that more details will come out at some point about this. Um, Give us some more clarity here, but with knowing what we know, it's surprising, it's disappointing. Not much else you can really say. I was excited for him. I did think he was poised to have a big year. I thought him and Reed as a sort of double punch out of the backfield would be awesome. Um, but yeah, I mean, hey, we got to move forward with guys that we have that are eligible, I guess.
Yeah, so obviously Desmond Reed will be the starter, barring any injuries, the rest of the season. Then you got the number 2 and 3 guys. It's going to be Derek Davis Jr., who transferred in from LSU prior to the 2023 season. He made a position switch at LSU from defensive back, I believe, to running back. So this is only, I think, his second year, or his might be his third season that he's at running back. But this will be the first season he really gets a lot of touches, I think. Obviously, his backup. And then obviously Daniel Carter, who is still at the team. Yes, he is still at the team in his 6th season. He's a third down. Well, not third down, but he's the third string running back. And Pat Narduzzi today at the press conference. Today is Monday. His opening press conference of the week, he talked about wanting to get Joel's Goff back, a freshman from Central PA. Can't remember the high school, but he was very good. He enrolled mid-year, so in January when some of the freshmen can enroll early. But he was injured. I think he had a cast on his right arm, if I'm not mistaken, when I saw him on the sideline. So he was not dressed. So what I'm assuming is that if he's healthy, he's the 4th guy on the list, and if someone gets injured, he would be 3rd or 2nd. Hopefully no one gets injured, obviously, but that seems like the case going forward with the running backs. How does that make you feel, Ken? Do you like the running back depth that we have without Rodney Hammond there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it stinks not that Hammond is ineligible, but I do think that we do have some good depth there. Otherwise, I think if as long as it stays healthy, I'm happy with the depth. As you mentioned, I'm a little bit, there's less room for error now in that room.
Um, yeah, I would agree. They're pretty solid guys for the most part. I mean, obviously Desmond's gonna be the most explosive one, but I think Derek and Daniel are solid guys that can run pretty well at the goal line, something like that. But I think you probably want Desmond doing most of the touches for the most part. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. How that all unfolds going forward. But I suppose we can transition to the wide receivers. Obviously, we talked about Kenny Johnson. Um, so I guess we can talk about some of the other receivers. I think we got to talk about the 2 receivers that came from Campbell's offense at Western Carolina in Sincere C.J. Lee and Raphael Poppy Williams Jr. Those guys did pretty well. I mean, CJ had 6 catches for 72 yards. I think those are the second most in both receptions and receiving yards on the team. And then Poppy had 4 catches, 2 of them touchdowns. Pretty nice touchdowns too. Not big long touchdowns, but pretty nice catches in the end zone. Um, Listen, touchdowns are great. After the last season and season before, didn't see a lot of them. So it's good to see that those 2 guys who were at Western Carolina in previous years. And I also believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Poppy was with Cade Bell at Tusculum at the Division II level in the 2021 spring season. Yes, COVID-19 happened. There was a spring football season in Division II. And he played with Cade Bell before going to Western Carolina for the next 2 seasons. And then last year he was with San Diego State, did not play for them, and then transferred to Pitt. So good to see him doing well after not really playing last year. And I think one thing that Narduzzi mentioned was not just CJ, but also Kenny. They were both kind of injured through camp and just finally getting them healthy. And obviously, we saw the production on Saturday. So I mean, we have a pretty good wide receiving core, I would say. I think the two guys you add, Konate had I guess receiving wise, had a pretty decent game. Had that first touchdown. So Kenny Johnson, Raphael Poppy, CJ, and Konate seem like the four guys going forward. They're going to get the ball. Kent, what did you see in the game that you liked from those guys?
Yeah, you mentioned it. They all had pretty good games. I think Eli's going to have a lot of options. I do think um, Kanate had a little bit of a rough game. He caught the first touchdown, pretty nice grab. Obviously dropped one later in the game. Kind of hit him right. Yeah, hit him right in the hand. Should have been another touchdown. Pitt almost gets stopped. They get bailed out by a targeting call. End up still scoring on that, but that was sort of a turning point in the game. Where Kent State kind of had a little bit of momentum. You expect a guy like Kanate as a captain to make those plays for you. Um, Kanate obviously also fumbles a punt return that Kent State turns into a touchdown. So a little bit of a sloppy game from Kanate, but I do expect him to bounce back and learn from those mistakes. It's obviously all good there. Sincerely and Poppy Williams, they had how many touchdowns combined? Did they each have one?
CJ did not have one. Poppy had two.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, solid route running. I thought, Cade Bell brought over the guys that he was comfortable bringing. If Cade's comfortable with them, if Eli's comfortable with them, I'm comfortable with them. That's sort of my mentality. When the QB announcement was made, my thought was, Zack and I and Mason were all a little bit had different opinions on this. Zack seemed very hesitant. Thought Urinel was definitely the guy. My thought kind of coming out of that decision was, if the guy whose offense scored 40 points a game last year wants Eli as his quarterback, I want Eli as my quarterback. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, okay, if Cade obviously brings Desmond Reed over, has a great game, brings over Sincere Lee, brings over Poppy Williams, like, bro, if those are his guys and if this is what the offense is going to look like, they're my guys too. Like, I'm all on board. I love that Eli has multiple options on the receiving side of things. Obviously, has Gavin in addition to that. This offense has a lot of potential to be really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it in the game. So many options at wide receiver, and that's what you want. You want a depth at your wide receiver position. It does seem, though, I think that Dejan Reynolds seems like the odd man out. He was listed as a starter last week with Kenny Johnson, but I think once they got CJ back, they're probably going to roll with him over Dejan. So it does seem like I said, Kenny, CJ, Poppy, and Kanate are the four wide receivers, and then Dejan's on the outs a little bit, and then Lamar Seymour, the redshirt freshman, will be having some catches as well in there. So that's how the wideouts look, and that's good for me. I mean, I think a lot of people expect a lot of Dejan, but I mean, if there's an injury, maybe he'll get a chance to play. But I think, as we said, those four guys are going to be the ones that get the most catches. And like Ken said, if two of those guys were in an offense that scored an unbelievable amount of points at the FCS level, and they look like they did today on Saturday against Kent State, I'm going to trust them. I'm just going to trust them.
Yeah, there's been a lot of years where Pitt's had some wide receivers with some drop issues. We didn't really have any of that on Saturday, knock on wood. For the most part, we had obviously had a couple drops, but nothing, for the most part, steady hands out of those guys. Really what I look for in a game like that. So, yeah, I'm happy with that. You know, obviously, we can mention the tight ends. Really, just Gavin, 5 catches, 66 yards. Do you have that pulled up?
Yeah, 5 catches, 56, 5 catches, 66 yards. No touchdown, but yeah, he looked good. I mean, but I think the problem is that I think people are expecting him to get like 10 catches a game in this offense. I'm like, I think he'll get like a few. I don't think he's going to get every catch, which is a good thing because when he does get the catches he needs, he'll be really good. You don't,
Yeah,
most tight ends are not Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelsey, Tony Gonzalez. Like they're just good, solid guys that block pretty well and then go out and make a catch when you need them to. That's what a good tight end is. It's like an extra option. as a blocker and receiver. You don't necessarily need them to be like your number one target.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting 66 yards off 5 catches, you're getting over 12 yards a catch. Like
Yeah,
you're doing something right.
yeah,
I think that also helps. Like you don't want, it's good to have options everywhere. It makes it very difficult to defend as an opponent when you have weapons all over the place. You have a guy like Gavin that, if you didn't have a strong receiving core, it's easy for defenses to zero in on a guy like that. But I think it's in Gavin's best interest too that there's these other guys around him, open him up a little bit, not let the defenses really just, double him or do anything like that.
yeah. And Jake Overman, transfer from Oregon State, got some playing time as well. So I think we're going to see both of them a lot. We're going to see Gavin. We're going to see Jake. Those guys are going to be the ones that play the most at tight end. And obviously, you really don't run more than two tight ends unless, like I said, injury suspension happens. So those two guys will be the guys going forward. And I can't say I'm mad about that. I think that's pretty solid tight end room for the most part. I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess we could talk about the O line if you want. I mean, we love talking about the offensive line here, so let's
Yeah.
get into the offensive
Yeah.
line.
Yeah. We can talk about the O line and just any other like thoughts you had from the game. Then we can kind of move on. Just the game was basically we were up by 14 at halftime. A little bit unsteady, just you know, not necessarily a comfortable lead at halftime. Pitt, turns it on in the second half. Kent State even cut it to 28-21 to open the second half. A little bit uncomfortable, at that point in the game. But at that point in the game, Pitt really turned it on. Ben Sauls even had, a great game, a couple of really, really big kicks in there.
Yeah, I mean, you want to see Ben Saul's doing well. So, yeah, I think he had his second longest field goal. I think if I remember correctly, so like 51 yards or something like that. I was
Yeah.
surprised that was one of his longest field goals. But
And it was dead center. It would have been good from 60. Like it was
yeah,
more than halfway out the uprights from 50. Like, yeah, you're talking good from 60 on that. Like in Heinz Field, at Christian Stadium. Uh, Still not used to that, but yeah, awesome to see that. Those are really all the big things that you want to see in a game like this. But yeah, I would say biggest concern. You may have been getting to this, but my biggest concern personally, O line. In this offense, it seems like the QBs aren't taking as big of drops. Not nearly as many steps back as they may have in past offenses here. Kent State was getting to Eli and to Nate.
yeah. I think there was like two straight plays where Eli got sacked. That was not good. But I think that they dealt with the speed pretty well with the game. Like there weren't like many false starts or anything like that from Pitts. That was a good sign. Like you don't want a lot of penalties, so it's a good thing they're on page with that. But I think they did get pushed back a little bit. I don't think Branson Taylor had as good of a game as he should have. He's probably the best offensive lineman I would say, or just the most experienced. And he didn't have the best game, but I think overall they were fine. It's really hard to gauge against a team like Kent State because you're like these guys don't have serious defensive linemen like a lot of the Power Five schools do. So Power Four, sorry. Um, and just like I think they probably could have done a bit better, but they did pretty well in the run game. They gave Eli enough time to get some throws. It wasn't amazing, but I think this is why it's good to play Kent State first week. So you're like, okay, like we made these mistakes. How do we get this right for Cincinnati, West Virginia going forward? And they have a pretty solid offensive line. I mean, Ryan Jacoby's back at left guard. That's good. Lyndon Cooper's at center over Terrence Moore. The center is the most important position in this offense, damn near. So if they believe that Lyndon Cooper is better than Terrence Moore, I'll go with Lyndon Cooper. You got B.J. Williams at right guard, was starting as a true freshman last year, which is pretty impressive, I would say. Looks like he'll be the starting right guard going forward, and then obviously Ryan Barrett, right tackle, he'll be there as well. So I would say they have a pretty decent offensive line at Pitt. I think last year they had some more experienced guys, but maybe not as much talent there. So I think maybe this year, if they get things going early and they can just get Eli some time and some holes for the running backs, they'll do pretty well as long as they keep it clean. Can't be too mad about it. I don't expect these guys to be future Hall of Famers. Just expect some good offense and some time for the quarterback and running back. So I think you would agree, Ken.
Yeah, for sure. These games are always about cleaning up mistakes that weren't necessarily cleaned up during fall camp. I would say on film, biggest takeaway I think in my mind, as well as a lot of Pitt fans' minds and probably coaches are going to be just cleaning up some of the O line stuff from Saturday when you get into these P4 games against D lines and linebackers, front sevens that are a lot stronger on the defensive side. Some of the stuff you're not going to get away with as much as you did in this game. Kent State obviously got to Eli a little bit more than I think we would have liked. But yeah, my trust is in the coaching staff and the new offensive staff to really just get those things cleaned up here in the next week, 2 weeks leading up to the brawl. Cincinnati, better opponent than Kent State, not necessarily a terrific opponent still, but just look better than last week. That's really all you can ask.
Yeah, and I think this allows us to transition into defense because we love talking about our great defense here at Pitt. They've obviously been pretty good under Narduzzi, who is a more defensive-minded coach. And this year, we have an interesting defense because we've got entirely new starters at defensive line, linebackers, and cornerback. So 9 of your 11 starters from last year are not there for the most part. There's guys that played, like Brandon George, but he never started. This was in his 6th year. This was his first start, which is crazy to say, but it was. Rashad Battle finally got a chance at cornerback, but let's start at the defensive line. Um, so the starters for this game, unsurprisingly, defensive end was Nate Matlack, transfer from Kansas State, and then we had Jimmy Scott, who the coaches have been raving about, but also wanting to see more from him at the other defensive end spot, and then 2 defensive tackles. This was a bit interesting at defensive tackle. I mean, obviously, Sean Fitzsimmons was a guy that people were talking about a lot, but he was not on the field. He was not on the field. Seems like he's injured. Um, Narduzzi hasn't spoken much about it. He said he was banged up at the last press conference prior to the Kent State game. So don't know if we're going to expect much from him. So, but it's unfortunate because he was injured last year. But so let's talk about the guys that are actually healthy. Isaiah Ghost Neal, redshirt freshman, didn't really play much last year at all, if I can remember. He started, and so did Nick James, transfer from Indiana. So those are the 2 starting defensive tackles, and they're the ones who got the most snaps. The other defensive tackles that played a lot were Nakai Johnson, who switched from defensive end to D tackle. And then we also had Anthony Johnson, who transferred from well, he was in the transfer portal a lot this past offseason, but he spent the last 3 seasons at 3 or 4 seasons at Youngstown State. So those are the 4 guys as D tackle they're going to go with. And I guess back to defensive end, the other 2 guys that played were surprisingly Sincere Edwards, true freshman. They've been raving about him, and he looked really good on Saturday. I guess we can talk about that a little bit more. And also Chief Borders, Nebraska transfer. And then those are the 2 guys, the 2 guys, along with Jimmy Scott and Nate Matlack, a defensive end. So it was interesting to watch. Ken, they seemed like they rotated entire defensive lines at times. Like they would take off the starters, bring the backups on, or like mix and match. It was really interesting to see because we obviously, with Charlie Partridge, defensive line coach, that was not happening under him. So it's interesting to see how Tim Dowse and Randy Bates and how they're getting all together. And even I'm pretty sure Narduzzi has a little bit of an input on how the defensive line is working. But are you worried with how much change there is at defensive line? Do you think it's okay that they're still trying to figure out who they want to go with going forward in the season in a game against Kent State?
I think that's fine. Like I mentioned earlier, I think games like this are for settling what wasn't necessarily settled in fall camp. If that's one of the things that the coaches felt needed a little bit more clarity, some real live game action against some guys that aren't your own. That's a good way to do it, especially in a game like that gets out of hand. It's good. It's good for coaching staff. It's good for players to battle it out in a game like that.
Yeah, and I guess my standout to the defensive line. I mean, listen, Ghost is a defensive tackle that they've been talking about a lot. I mean, he seemed like he did pretty well. He had an interesting celebration after one of his sacks. But I mean, hey, they had 5 sacks overall as a defense. I mean, the defensive line didn't get all the sacks, but I think there's some growing pains there. But I'm just interested to see who's going to win the battle going forward at defensive tackle. I mean, one guy that we were expecting was true freshman Francis Brewu, who is probably one of the strongest people on the entire planet, according to the coaching staff. He did not play. he was in, he wasn't dressed. So like another injury, unfortunately, on the defensive tackle. But yeah, I'm really interested to see who's going to get some more snaps going forward. But again, like I agree with you, Ken. I think it's a game where you try to figure out who really is, your starter, and I think that's why, again, this week they have 5 listed starters at D tackle, so I'm not sure they're going to start, but we'll see going forward, I guess. Should we talk about the linebackers? I mean, I think they were pretty solid for the most part. I think they're probably the best unit on defense. Yeah, 3 new starters. Although Braylon Lovelace did start a little bit last year, but he's starting at money. You have Brandon George at Mike linebacker and Kyle Lewis, who people have been pretty excited about at star linebacker or just outside linebacker if you weren't sure what that meant. And Rasheed Biles did pretty well as well. I mean, obviously special teams ace, but has been looking to get more. Was a freshman last year, was incredibly good. I think he blocked 2 punts, which is pretty impressive. It's not easy to block a punt. Doing it twice as a true freshman is pretty impressive. But he did pretty well at linebacker as well. Got to the quarterback. I think did get a sack. But yeah, I think they did pretty good overall. But I was curious, Ken, did you like the linebacking play? I mean, all new guys. You think they did pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I thought they did well. I was happy overall with the defensive effort in this game. The first touchdown came on a 4th and long on a skinny post. They were in quarters coverage. That's a quarters beater. For the most part, they took care of business. Brandon George had a really nice strip sack later in the game. Recovered it as well. There were some nice plays made by this group. And like you mentioned, defense has never necessarily been, um, the weak part of a Pitt football team. Narduzzi's typically kept that, pretty solid. I anticipate, the same thing. Coaches, my trust is in the coaches to get everything figured out, even with new faces in there, kind of across the board, like you mentioned. I thought for having a brand new group in there, they overall performed well.
Yeah, and 2 guys I forgot to mention: Key Thompson. I think he's a seventh seventh year player. I think he started playing in 2018. So, but he was pretty solid. Had a few. I think he had almost 30 snaps, so he definitely played a little bit. He's back up to Brandon George at Mike linebacker or inside linebacker, and then you have Jordan Bass, who was Pitt's highest rated recruit in the 2023 class. He was also a wide receiver in high school, but he's a player to watch out for. Was a little bit injured in spring, so he might be coming along a little bit slower than I think Braylon and Rasheem have, because they've been pretty healthy for most of the spring and fall camp. So yeah, a lot of depth at linebacker. I agree with you, Ken. I think they're probably maybe, I think aside from the safeties who have the most experience that we'll get to in a second, probably the second best, I guess, unit at this time. I would say, just in terms of what they have, and a little bit of experience from an Ohio transfer like Thompson, and also just you know George has been around for a while, played in that ACC championship game. He's been around, so it's good to have some experience. A lot of new talent, a lot of players trying to prove themselves. Always what you want in a defense. Um,
Yeah,
on to cornerbacks. Not to cut you off, Ken, but cornerbacks. We have 2 new cornerbacks that are starters. Rashad Battle, who's dealt with injuries his past 2 seasons, played the most snaps of anybody on defense at cornerback. And we also had Rylan Gandy. He played a lot of snaps as well. And the third cornerback that played a little bit as well was Tamon Lynham, Nebraska transfer. I think they did okay. I mean, there wasn't anything crazy from any of those guys that I saw, but I mean, I wasn't surprised to see Rashad or Ryland starting. I think that's pretty much what Narduzzi's been pointing at, and also Tamon being that backup cornerback as well. What did you think, Ken?
yeah, not much to add. I mean, they played well from what we can see, but again, it's not necessarily always easy to tell in a matchup like this where you got coming in. I think they had 50 yards of offense during the first half. Um, yeah, I mean, overall, defense took care of business.
Yeah. I guess the safeties just ended everything out. PJ didn't play as well as I thought he was. He did get the start over Donovan, although I think Donovan ended up playing more snaps anyway, so that started whatever. But yeah, PJ got beat twice for a touchdown. I mean, granted, first game you play Kent State, that's fine, but you can't be doing that against West Virginia or Cincinnati. Obviously, next week, this week, sorry, you got to make sure that's got to be fixed. And I know, obviously, Pitt does play a lot of pretty much man coverage, so like players are going to get beat every now and then, but not great to see that happening in the first game. But again, like we said, those first game mistakes you hope to get rectified. And yeah, I don't have much to add. I think obviously Javon and Donovan are the two better start safeties, but PJ's also pretty solid as well. Although could have had a better game against Kent State. Um, what else is
Yeah.
there? I think it's pretty much we pretty much got the entire team. Any players to watch going forward? I think we mentioned Sincere Edwards, defensive end, true freshman. We didn't mention Cruz Brookins. I thought he had a decent game. Didn't play a ton, but he's a very versatile player. I think he can play either safety or even come in as a linebacker on the Delta package when they added another guy on a blitz on third downs, if I remember correctly. But yeah, like he's a really solid player from Steel Valley, so very close by in Whitfield, and that's a player I have to watch out for. Any players from Kent that that caught your eye that maybe we didn't talk about a ton that might be good to look at going forward?
I'm an offensive guy. Frankly, I think the offensive guys all really shine bright in this game. I don't think there's going to be anybody that's going to catch you by surprise that didn't have a solid game already on Saturday.
All right. So obviously Cincinnati's on Saturday on the road. So first road test of the season. Cincinnati was terrible last year, but so was Pitt, which is why that week 2 game last year was awful. Kent, were you there for that game? I was in the press box, so I'm always at the games. But were you there at the game?
I was not in attendance for that game. I did painstakingly watch the whole thing on my television. That was an ugly game last year. I do hope for better football this year.
Yeah. Just to remind everyone, Phil Dracovic was 10 of 32 in that game. He missed all 11 targets to Bub Means. That happened, and they almost came back and won that game. They that's how bad Cincinnati were. They finished 3-9, 1-7 in the Big 12 last year under Scott Satterfeld. Not good in their first season in the Big 12. They were not very good. Pitt wasn't good either. So two rivals. This is the final edition. Well, it's not the final edition ever, but the last edition of the River City rivalry as we know it. There's no scheduled games between the two teams. Unfortunately, I would love to see this rivalry going forward. I think the two teams make sense in terms of the size of their fan bases and having to deal with NFL teams, et cetera, and having good years prior. And obviously, in the Big East, towards the end of it, a really good rivalry, some great games, some heartbreakers for Pitt fans. But yeah, what do you think about this River City rivalry? Is it a rivalry to you, Zach? Ken, do you think this is a rivalry, or do you think it's more just a good game between two teams?
My thing, I don't like having too many rivalries. I think if you're gonna have a rival,
Like one or two?
yeah, we already have two rivals. Penn State won't play us, but West Virginia, that's a true rival in my eyes. I would Cincinnati. It's a stretch. I do agree with you though in the fact that it's two city schools, similar sized fan bases. NFL teams in the same division. Not that necessarily plays into it, but it makes sense. Size wise, general competitive competitiveness level wise, I would say. Last year good matchup. Both teams were terrible. Um, this year, Cincinnati, they played Towson last week. They win by 18 points, I think. Towson is not.
Yeah, 38-20.
Um, I hope Pitt takes care of business this year. Almost winning last year with Phil Dracovic versus how the offense looked on Saturday. I have some high hopes for Saturday.
Yeah, I guess I can go to some players to watch out for. I guess I'll name the players that Narduzzi named because that seems like the players he's going to be watching for. But obviously, Brendan Sorsby transferred from Indiana. I think he played a lot towards the end of last season for Indiana. But obviously, with their head coach getting fired, almost everyone left the program. They did the most transfers out of any Power Five program or any Division One FBS program last season. So he goes to Cincinnati, wins that starting job. He was all right. I mean, I watched some of the stuff against Towson. Wasn't unbelievable, but looked better than what they were doing last year. So maybe that'll be a better game for the neutral. But yeah, he's a guy to look out for. Obviously, just going to defense really quickly. Dante Corleone, which is an awesome name. Just have to say that I think he's still out. Narduzzi expects him to be back for this week, but we'll see what he thinks. I'm not sure about him coming back. I'm trying to look what he had. he had a non-football injury. They found blood clots in his lungs, and they were able to treat him for it, which is good. Obviously, don't want to see players going down with that. It's very serious type of thing to deal with. So hopefully he is back. I mean, obviously, if you're a Pitt fan, you probably like, I don't want him back. But for me, I like seeing all the best players play against each other. That's what you want. So, and if he does play, he's a wrecking ball on that at defensive tackle. Definitely someone that the Lyndon Cooper and Jerian Jacoby and BJ Williams are going to have to work really hard against. They play a 3-4, so that's three defensive linemen, but that's going to be a handful for them if he's healthy to play. So those are two guys I'm looking at going forward.
Awesome.
Um, let me see. Anyone else to look at? They have let's see who else they have. Xavier Henderson from I think I can't remember he transferred there. He's a pretty solid wide receiver. They get like 105 yards in the win against Towson. They have a tight end from Ohio State, Royer. Um, so there's some guys to look at, but this is really two teams that are looking to throw last season in the trash and try to be better teams. So that's really what to look forward in this game. Yeah, so I'm assuming you'll be excited for this one, Ken.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I think a lot of Pitt fans out there are a lot more excited after Saturday's performance, and just the overall look and feel of how the offense was. I think it's going to get a lot of people excited for Saturday.
Before we go into anything else, we forgot to mention that our beloved Kenny Pickett was booed reportedly last weekend. I at the stadium, I was there. Obviously, you were not, Kent, but I was there. I did not hear a ton of booing from where I was, but to be fair, there's glass in between the the general area of the stadium and us in the press box, so I can't hear everything incredibly well. But it seemed like it happened during when they showed his highlight with the Eagles in the preseason because they did a little, they always do a Pitt football alumni what they do in the NFL this week, and people seem to boo him, which I think is a tad ridiculous beyond any measure as a Pitt fan. I don't even know what to say, Ken. This is ridiculous overall.
Yeah, I obviously wasn't there. I've seen some controversy on Twitter whether this actually happened or it didn't happen. Um, there's enough people saying that it happened to believe that it did happen. My thoughts are if you are a Pitt fan or supposedly a Pitt fan who is going to boo Kenny Pickett, you are disgusting. That is horrible.
Yep.
Like, you're talking about a guy who led your program to an ACC championship win, to just remarkable season after remarkable season, like Heisman finalist in his final year as your quarterback, 5-year starter. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, just to think about it, would USC fans ever boo Matt Leinart? Would Florida fans ever boo Tim Tebow because he didn't succeed in the NFL? I mean, no, because those guys were great in college, and that's what matters most. I mean, yes, I know. I also am from Pittsburgh. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I watch the Steelers and I watch Kenny play. Not as good as you would have liked, but overall the offense was terrible because they had an awful offensive coordinator. The Steelers offense just is not great. I don't know what to tell you guys. I wish I could say it's great. It's not, and he struggled. But if you're a Pitt fan, I mean, this guy has the program record for probably the best quarterback season ever in Pitt history. I don't know how the hell you could ever boo him. I'm pretty sure it was just a small amount of fans, so we're probably preaching to the choir here. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, but yeah, don't boo Kenny Pickett. Grow up if you did. Come on, be serious here.
Yeah, regardless if you're a Steelers fan, whatever, dude. Like that, there's just no excuse for that. Like,
Yep. Um, what should we do next? Want to talk about some of the best games of this week?
yeah, let's talk some, high
What do you watch
profile
this week?
games,
I
and let's just kind of go through the ACC quickly here to talk about high, some highs and some lows from ACC play this week. Um, what would you like?
Virginia Tech lost. Virginia Tech lost. Did you watch that game?
I did, yes. I was going to say that was going to be one of the first games I mentioned. So let's just go through the ACC quickly. We can talk through some other higher profile games outside of that. Side note: Florida State is currently losing to Boston College 21-6 in the third quarter. as we are recording this. So we will see if that holds. Virginia Tech loses on the road to Vanderbilt as what was the spread in that game?
I don't know, but I can't imagine anyone had a Vanderbilt winning.
Yeah, Virginia Tech. They end up losing in overtime. They were down pretty significantly early. I want to say it was um, 17-0. I think, yeah, 17-0 early. End up kind of clawing themselves back into the game and losing in overtime. Their quarterback gets hurt on the last play of regulation, misses overtime. Um, Vanderbilt ends up scoring first in overtime. Virginia Tech trots out there with their backup quarterback looking to tie the game, and he launches the ball out of the end zone for the final play and the loss. Um, just a tough look for the Hokies to start the season in year two of their head coach.
Yeah, unfortunately, everyone, I was covering the game, so I did not get to watch that. But I just think, like, after Virginia Tech, they had really low expectations last season. They did pretty well. I think some people tried to have them wanted them ranked and or even had them in the college football playoff. Um, you're not going to make the college football playoff, even though it made 12 teams. If you're losing to Vanderbilt, not just saying you got to win against Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a very tough loss and look to start the season. I'm sure there's a lot of Hokie fans out there that are um, very disappointed. I know you mentioned it. I have some Hokie fan friends that were surprised they weren't ranked to begin the season. Just to let you know, kind of how that fan base sort of operates. That there are a lot of years that somehow Virginia Tech is ranked in the top 25 before the season begins, and nobody ever understands why, and then they underperform. Here is a prime example of that, being just outside of the top 25 and losing to Vanderbilt in week one.
I think we got to talk about Clemson, man. I didn't watch this, but a 34-3 loss to Georgia just looks like a program that's in a disarray. Do you think that's an apt way to put it? I mean, if you watch the game, what can you say about that loss?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch this game myself, but obviously the score speaks for itself. Dabo and the Clemson Tigers are in disarray. That is a tough way to start your season against Georgia. Practically, it's a neutral site game, but you're playing in Atlanta, essentially a road game. Um, yeah, it's tough to see a 34-3 loss for the Tigers. Um, doesn't bode well for the Kate Klubnik offense. Also, yeah, Dabo not getting anybody in the transfer portal. I feel like there's going to be more and more calls from Clemson fans for um, some change there. We'll see kind of how that situation plays out the rest of the year. Obviously, Pitt plays Clemson later in the year. It would be nice if Clemson can kind of flip the switch on next week. I'm not sure who they play, but yeah.
I guess we can go to some highlights. I mean, we'll start off with the team Pitt plays this year. North Carolina goes into Minnesota and they win. They lose Max Johnson for the year, so unfortunate for that. But they win. They beat a pretty good defensive Minnesota team. I mean, neither team was good offensively from what I saw. But did you watch this game? Do you have any comments on how this North Carolina team might look when Pitt plays them in early October?
I also missed that game. I had Minnesota in this game. Yeah, obviously they did lose Johnson for the year. Minnesota misses a field goal to win it at the end of regulation. Back and forth game. I did think Minnesota was going to pull this out, but North Carolina finds a way to win with their backup QB. So kudos to them. But it's going to be tough. You go from Drake May going to the draft to Johnson to now not sure who they're
I don't know, but it's not good to have your starter after the year.
yeah, that's a really tough way to start the year. So great to have the win, especially on the road. Um, but yeah, that doesn't bode well for the program moving forward.
I do think the biggest win of the year, biggest win of the week for the ACC was Miami. I mean, just taking it to the Florida Gators in the swamp, and obviously, I don't know if you saw the videos of the Miami players going to the Florida recruits after the game, being like, "Come on, join the U." Like that. That is, we've talked about the U. We talked about Miami before. Everyone has about just they're just not reaching their potential. I mean, obviously, it was a fantastic program in the '80s and parts of the '90s, obviously early 2000s. But recently, since they joined the ACC, I mean, they've never won the ACC. Pitt has an ACC championship before they do. So I mean, it's kind of like, is this a year they finally get things right? Does Mario Cristobal get things right? And well, I don't know if that's gonna be true, but hell, starting the season this way is unbelievably impressive. And well, it says a lot about my Florida, I think, but I also think it says that Miami is this team to take seriously, at least right now.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Miami looked really good in this game. Yeah, you mentioned the videos. It was it was awesome. They had the recruits that were there for Florida throwing up the U at the end of the game. Like it was bad. Like Miami might be back, folks. This is going to be probably the team to watch in the ACC this year, minus the Panthers, I should say. But yeah, they looked really good to start this one off. Florida fans were in just utter disarray, disappointment. Like the still shots of their fans in this game were like
Yeah,
head on
it's
the
fun.
concrete wall, looking just dismayed.
Yep, Miami Cam Ward might be a serious player to watch out for. So they might be a fun team to watch. Pitt does not play Miami this year, but maybe they will in early December. I'm just kidding, guys, but maybe not. But back to the ACC. Let's get some of these FCS games out of the way. Virginia beats Richmond at home 34-13. SMU destroys Houston Christian 59-7 at home to go to 2-0. But some teams struggle with their FCS opponents, but not Louisville. They beat Austin Peay 62 nothing.
Yeah,
They did not struggle. And neither did Duke 26-3 at home. But who did struggle? NC State, they were down at least. They were down by the third quarter. They were down 21-17 heading into the fourth quarter, but they scored 3 touchdowns. They managed to beat Western Carolina at home 38-21. So even though Cade Bell took some of the better players and he left, it seems like that Western Carolina team is still in good shape going forward. But also that NC State probably needs to be a bit more careful which FCS teams they schedule
yeah.
going forward.
Yeah, if you listened to the pod last week and tailed me on the NC State spread bet, I apologize. The logic was there. Grace McCall comes into NC State. Cade Bell leaves Western Carolina with a lot of their best players, and you it's a recipe to cover the spread for NC State in Week 1. Didn't happen. NC State looked horrendous in the earlier part of this game. They did basically drop a pick six on the first play of the game, and from there it kind of came to bite them in the butt. Grayson McCall throws an ugly pick. They return it down to about the 2 yard line, score on the next play, go down. So yeah, there was some nail biting down there in North Carolina for that one. That was an interesting game to watch. They turned it on late, win by 17, I think.
Yeah, they got it good in the end. So
So they got the job done in the end, but yeah, that was an interesting one.
let's check some of the other games. Stanford, TCU. Stanford, they were up at halftime against TCU, but TCU gets it out in the end, but wins by 7 points, so a touchdown, 34-27. And the other team that came from the Pac-12, Cal, they beat UC Davis 31-13. It was a 14-13 game at halftime, but they managed to put away the FCS opponent. I don't think Cal's going to be a great team, but maybe I'll be proven wrong. I don't think Stanford's going to be good either, but at least Stanford put up a good fight against a much better team than UC Davis. uh, don't know any other games to look at. Wake Forest did kill NCANT the 45-13. Syracuse managed to beat Ohio at home 38-22. Pitt will obviously play them.
I was in that game for a while.
Yeah, it looks like they were. Yeah, I wasn't able to watch, but yeah, that
Syracuse struggled against Ohio, so we'll see.
yeah. Kyle McCord is obviously the Syracuse quarterback. I don't know how you feel about that. I don't think Mr. Zach Kaminsky likes Kyle
He,
McCord too much, or Ohio State fans don't like Kyle McCord.
he hates him.
Right.
Yeah, the rest of the ACC was pretty chalk. Um,
Got to mention Georgia Tech beating Georgia State because Mr. Christian Veillere started for Georgia State. They didn't win, obviously lost 35-12, but nice to see him starting for another team. Hopefully he figures things out in Atlanta.
do you have
That
his
wraps up
stats for
the
that game?
ACC. What?
Do you have his stats for that game? I was curious.
Yeah, I think he threw a touchdown. Yeah, 19 of 34, 210 yards, and one touchdown. He had 3 rushes for 22 yards. It doesn't look like he got sacked at all, or he didn't, or he ran for a ton and got sacked. I don't know, but let's see. Should we look at the top 25 games before
Yeah,
we?
let's look at some top 25 games.
A lot of blowouts. Not really anything surprising. Obviously,
Ole
the
Miss
biggest game.
winning 76-0 something.
The bigger games of the week was number 7 Notre Dame going into College Station and getting a 23-13 win against Texas A&M. Former Duke quarterback Riley Leonard is now the quarterback of Notre Dame. So interesting to see how that works. He only had 158 passing yards, so this wasn't a very beautiful game, it seems. But that's a nice win for them. I mean, I don't think Notre Dame has a really hard schedule, so I think this is probably shoehorning them into the college football playoff is not too surprising. Did you watch this game, Kent, or doing other doing other stuff on a Saturday?
I actually did watch a good portion of that game. Um, I had Notre Dame in this game. I am not surprised that they did pull it out. I was surprised they were dogs, honestly, in this game. What's the coach? Duke's old coach that went to he coaches Texas.
Elko, I think. Is it Mike Elko?
Yeah. Super interesting matchup week one for that storyline. Um, Notre Dame ends up pulling it out here. Scored 10 points in the fourth quarter. Win by 10 down there at Kyle Field. But yeah, that was one of the bigger games of the week. The other big one that Pitt fans will most likely care the most about, Penn State, West Virginia.
Yep.
Um, people. I was surprised how many people thought West Virginia was going to
Yeah,
win this game. Uh,
that was ugly to say the least.
were you feeling that way going into the game as well?
I mean, I just think. Listen, this is kind of the same thing with Virginia Tech. There's a reason why people were down on those two teams coming into 2023. And I think they had decent years, but I mean, looking at West Virginia, they didn't beat anyone amazing last year. There weren't any games I was like, wow, shouldn't have won this game, but they did. And I think that's a kind of a problem because it's like, you know, if a coach is getting things right after they got things wrong, they're beating teams they're not supposed to, and they're going to take it to any team. But you're at home. College game day was there, right? Like
Yeah,
they lost by 22 points. They let Drew Aller, a man who is not really the greatest quarterback in the world, look like prime. I don't know. Think of a good quarterback. Just insert good quarterback, and he played like that. He just played really well, and it was like, I mean, this is your home field, and it looked like nothing. It looked like this is hardly a game.
yeah. Huge rain delay in this one. I'm not sure exactly how long it lasted, but halftime, pretty much an hour plus rain delay. Um, but Penn State was up at that point as well. I think they were up 20-6 at that point. West Virginia scrapes out 6 points in the fourth quarter to put up a 12. Yeah, West Virginia, it was a tough look. They got another big thing from this game. There was a spot from the ref that kind of went viral. West Virginia goes for it on fourth and short, seemingly gets stuffed. Ref gave them the first down. Penn State basically challenged. They reviewed it and still gave them the spot. So even with that help, they get blown out by 22 points.
Yeah, not a good game. Not a good look for West Virginia. I mean, they'll have it a bit easier this week. They play Albany, but yeah, that's then they got the backyard brawl. So we'll see how Pitt does against Cincinnati before we get into any trash talking on West Virginia.
We'll
um,
we'll have a very big episode next week, backyard brawl preview
yeah,
for y'all. But yeah, we'll take it this week, take it 1 week at a time. Was happy to see that they got kind of put in their place a little bit. I'm sure you know never, that it's lesser of two evils in that matchup. However you feel one way or the other. But seemingly that we play West Virginia. It was kind of
Nice to see, I guess,
close.
if you're a Pitt fan.
Yeah.
Um, one more ranked uh, matchup this week. This is a Sunday night game. The only obviously no NFL this week. They will start on Thursday, and then this next Sunday will be the first full week of NFL festivities. But LSU went to Allegiant Stadium to take on USC. So both teams are ranked. LSU was 13, and USC was number 23. And really good game overall. I enjoyed watching that. Obviously, a Sunday night game is not something you get to see a lot as a college football fan, but it was really good overall. And USC comes back and gets the win in this one. A lot of trash talking at the end, and some people are already calling for a Brian Kelly's head. So that's week one for college football for you. Did you get to watch this game, Ken?
Yeah, I watched some of it. I did not. I was exhausted. And but yeah, Brian Kelly's interview after the game was pretty funny. Slams the desk um, with his fist. Basically says he has to be better. Said that his whole sideline was not in it as much as they should have been. Essentially, um, it was he was pissed that they didn't find a way to win that game. From what I've seen, they should have won the game, or had a lot of chances to win that game, I should say. Did not get it done essentially. So, congrats USC. That's a big win for them. First year post Caleb Williams to open the season up. But yeah,
Yeah. Do you want to
it's
get
always
into
funny
some?
to see Brian Kelly lose.
Yeah. Do you want to get into some big games for this week? Is that what you want to do? I think I
Let's
want to get into.
one other game want to mention from this past week. Oregon struggles against Idaho. A lot of people are really high on them to potentially win the national championship this year. I think our buddy Mason here has them to to win the Natty in a future. They win over Idaho by 10 points. I think as 50-point favorites. They they were up 17-14 in the fourth quarter. Um, it was a lot. It was slightly uncomfortable. They did outgain them in yards, 487 to 217. Dylan Gabriel had a nice game. Stats were 41 for 49, 380 yards and two touchdowns. But yeah, it was a little bit close for comfort there in Eugene.
Hmm. Thank you for reminding me about Dylan Gabriel still playing. And yes, Dylan Gabriel was playing for UCF against Pitt in 2019. Yes, he is still a quarterback in college football in 2024. Um, um, yeah, we have a top 10 matchup this week. Well, before the new rankings come out. Number 4, Texas goes to Ann Arbor to face the reigning national champions, and number 9, Michigan. I don't think Michigan's good as they were last year. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, it's tough coming off a national championship. You lose your head coach, you lose your quarterback, you lose all of it. It's you're typically going to take a step back in that situation.
Trying to see what other games are big. We got Cal going to Auburn. Yes, Cal is going to Auburn. That's on ESPN2, 3:30 kickoff. Interesting one there. Yeah, that's an interesting game to watch. But obviously, it is week 2. A lot of duds, unfortunately. Some ACC games to watch out for. We'll just go through that really quick. Georgia Tech goes to Syracuse. We'll see if Georgia Tech's for real. We'll see if Syracuse isn't terrible. Um, Other games to watch out for. Virginia Tech Marshall might be a game to watch out for. Don't know. Maybe Virginia Tech loses that one. um, let's see. Tennessee, NC State. That is a good game. That'll be at NC State. Both teams are ranked, so that'll be a big game to watch if you're interested in that. And then we do have an ACC game as well at the end of the night, 7 p.m. Virginia and Wake Forest. If you're interested in some conference ball, we got that going as well. Trying to see some other games, and also SMU goes to BYU, so that'll be a good game for the Mustangs. They didn't do well against Nevada. Obviously, had a good game against a pretty bad FCS team, but we'll see how good they do against BYU. I don't know how to gauge BYU. Our beloved Keaton Slovis is no longer with them, so not sure what to think about. Not sure what to think about them. Uh, and also, Duke plays Northwestern. those are both Friday night games, so interesting to watch. See how those teams do. Um, but not a ton of big time matchups besides the ones I mentioned. Boise State goes to Oregon. That could be a good game. It's a 10 p.m. start on Peacock. Colorado goes to Nebraska. That'll be probably one of the bigger games of the week. That's on NBC, 7:30 p.m. Uh, Anything else that we can look at? Kansas goes to Illinois. Might be an interesting game. See if Kansas is for real. Trying to see what else. If we got anything else interesting on there. Not really a lot. Just some. Yeah, that's kind of what I got really. I think, and that's what I got for this week. Ken, those are my games. Any of those really interesting stand out to you?
Not particularly. I like
It's not a big week.
yeah, I like Texas to cover -7 against Michigan. You know, Michigan's at home, but I think Texas is um, they're the real deal this year. I think they're uh, team to watch this year for sure. I like them to cover -7 easy in Ann Arbor. Um, I was 1 for 2 on my spread picks last week, so that's going to be my pick there. Christmas matchup of the week last week. Forgot to mention the results of that one. That was Eastern Michigan. They won the first Christmas matchup of the week last week, 24-14. So congrats to Eastern Michigan. This week it's going to be Michigan State at Maryland. The Terps are at home. I like them to cover -8 as well in that one. They looked good in the first game of the year. And yeah.
I guess that Pitt Cincinnati game is going to be one of the bigger games of the week. Then I guess I think people will probably be tuning in for a little rivalry. I guess, but that's on ESPN2. I think there were decisions. I think Kansas State Tulane gets the ESPN game, but ESPN2 is a good. Hey, it's good. It's probably better than the CW than like it was last year. So if you're a Pitt fan, you're interested in like TV ratings. A noon ESPN2 game is not bad. That'll be a good game to watch, and I will be there. In case any of you guys are going down to Cincinnati or you're around the area and want to go. Cincinnati's a nice city. I do like the Cincinnati campus. That stadium is right in the middle of campus. It's pretty cool to see. So if you're ever down there, there's not. I don't know about the tailgating situation, but yeah, that's how. But yeah, just talk about the TV stage for Pitt Cincinnati because I don't have much else on the college football slate. We're almost out of here. I think I will give you a tiny, quick little Olympic sports recap since I've been doing some coverage. Volleyball obviously started this week. They got a win. They started the season off with a win for the first time since 21. They swept Oregon, then ranked number 10 Oregon. They are now number 3 in the polls. So if you're a Pitt fan, that bodes well for them hosting in the NCAA tournament. And they also swept Long Beach State. They look good. They really look good. I mean, 10 p.m. Big Ten Network. 10 p.m. start on a Friday night was not great because Pitt played Kent State at noon, but good for a television game. And also good for a win. I mean, this is a team that beat them last year. I mean, Oregon did lose most of their players, but if you're Pitt, you still have a little bit of revenge. You want to start off the season with a win, and when you bring back 5-year starters, 4 of them being All Americans, you did pretty well. A nice sweep is always good, and I could say more, but really they're good. Season opener is Tuesday. Well, not season opener. A home opener is Tuesday night against Buffalo, and then they'll have the weekend off, oddly enough, and then they'll be in LA next week against a ranked USC team. That'll be a rematch of the of the second round NCAA tournament game last year. So there'll be some bad blood there. USC is a good team. They did lose Skylar Fields, but they do add Ali Batenhorst from Nebraska. They have Tuaniga, their setter, I believe, is also pretty good. So that'll be a good game next Wednesday on the Big Ten Network at 9 p.m. So that'll be fun. And then obviously Penn State in 2 weeks. If you haven't got your tickets yet, I would go to that game. That's going to be a great one. Obviously, college rivalries are what make college sports, so that's a big game. And a few last things: the soccer teams have done pretty well. They both have a loss, but they also won their other games. So I think the women's team's 4-1, the men's team's 3-1. Yeah, they're both pretty solid teams. They'll be good this year. So everyone's starting out pretty well. Can't complain. I cannot complain about both teams' performances so far. And yeah, Pitt looks good. The fall is obviously the better programs, so hopefully football comes through as well. That's all. That's how to end this thing.
Yeah, yeah. You can hope. I mean, we have already got 33% of the wins we had last year, in so far. So we'll see. Got high hopes for this weekend against Cincinnati. Would love to be 2-0 going into Backyard Brawl Week. I think it would make for just a lot more excitement and hype, just overall for both fan bases going into that one. So um,
Yeah, I guess we'll sign off. This is Dominic Campbell. You can find my stuff at Inside the Panthers on YouTube, online, or find me on Twitter. Dom is money, silly name, easy to find. But yeah, I'm always around. If you have any questions, you're ever curious about some Pitt stuff, I'll try to do the best I can to answer your questions. Covering as many Pitt sports as I can. Obviously, the fall is the biggest time, and obviously basketball will come around the corner. So 2 months to that. So excited for college sports to be back. And I just want to thank Kent for having me on. I think we did a pretty good job without Zack, but he'll be back on next week for that backyard brawl. That'll be a big edition, a big pod. So hopefully you guys tune in for that one. And Mason Kling will be back as well. But signing off, thank you so much for listening, and hope you have a good week. And if you're in Cincinnati, come say hi.
awesome. Thanks so much for joining us this week, Dom. Yeah, as you mentioned, Mason and Zach will be back next week. Big Backyard Brawl edition. Um, my handle is at Kent_VW, and my name will be changed here shortly to reflect and no longer or. It might even be Eli. Follow up. All right. Well, signing off. Beat the Bearcats.
Let's go, Pitt.